here, and firstly, Selamat Hari Raya to those who are still celebrating. Thank you to Arus Academy, to FWP Takaful for having me, for having us. If I may just introduce myself briefly, I am Naila Pura. I'm a journalist and a news presenter at Astro Awani. I'm very honored to be here with such esteemed panelists to be speaking about a very, very important subject. But before we get to this important subject, I'd like to just briefly share that actually on my way here in the car, on a Grab ride, the radio was turned on, and funnily enough, the song that the radio was playing was this song, Young, Dumb and Broke. I'm getting a few nods, like, yes, I know that song, it was popular at one point, and I'm getting some confused faces here. I remember that song. But, you know, it kind of made me think about how, when I was younger, not so long ago, you know, being broke among, you know, my circle of friends was at times something that was glamorous. It was something that was normalized. It became a running joke. But you know how you grow up from adolescence to young adulthood, gaining that little bit of control over your finances made you just have this kind of tendency to behave a little recklessly and spend, basically according to your impulses, right? But coming out of the pandemic, of course, seeing how the state of the global economy today, young people just can no longer afford to behave so recklessly and just spend at their will. And so I'm very happy to be here to be talking about something that I relate to so personally as well on an individual level. And if I may just share some statistics to share to our international delegates, just the state of financial literacy among youth in Malaysia today. As of the end of last year, over 20% of the 47,000 people declared bankrupt between 2018 and September 2022 were under the age of 34, with over 10,000 were aged between 25 and 34, while those under 25 years old make up 240 bankruptcy cases. And this is just between that time period. And in another separate study by the Consumer Research and Resource Center on Financial Behavior of Youth, it was found that 47% of young workers were excessively in debt. These are some damning statements, but that just goes to show the reality of young people and the financial pressures and struggles that they face today. And so this is why this hour we want to hear from our panelists about why and how young people should manage their finances better, and how financial literacy, starting at a young age, in the way that Arus Academy and FWP Takaful are trying to do, how this can really go a long way in trying to prevent this issue from becoming even worse. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. Of course, they've been introduced, Professor Frederick and Abdul Wahid Omar. Thank you for joining us today. If I may, I'd like to start with you, Professor Frederick, because I think it's important for a lot of the Malaysian students here listening in to understand perhaps some similarities and some differences that we can look at between Malaysia and Hong Kong on this issue, where in Hong Kong, clearly the cost of living is much higher, it being a global financial hub. I mean, how do the young people of Hong Kong cope with financial struggles and pressures?
Very good question. First of all, I have to echo what you said about the bankruptcy numbers, because many years ago in Hong Kong, it was revealed that some of the bank's credit card losses, you know, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, being a former chairman of a major bank here, has skyrocketed. Why? Because the bank issued too many credit cards to university students who have no concept about financial responsibility and just spend, and then causing the bank to, you know, have a record losses in credit card. So that just highlight a couple of things. To me, financial literacy for young people means two things. Number one is responsibility. One has to be responsible in life. So if you are not responsible in life, you're not going to be successful, right? You know. So to learn about financial literacy means responsibility. How do you run your life in a responsible way. You just don't spend without thinking about paying back the bank. That is not good, right? You know. And then if you do that, you ended up in bankruptcy cases, like you said. So to me, financial literacy is not just about financial. It's more about one's life, being responsible. The second thing in financial literacy that you learn is risk and reward. Because in life, there's no such thing as low risk and high reward. Okay? It's always high risk, high reward, low risk, low reward. You put money in the bank, you get very, small return. But if you bank with the right bank, like the bank you used to work for, you'll be fine. Okay? You get back your money, right? So that's low risk, low return. Alternatively, you invest in stock market, that's higher risk. Of course, you should expect higher return. Okay? But like recent years, we talk about cryptocurrency. It is something I don't know as a 71-year-old man. How would I know all this, funny stuff called crypto? But, some of my friends do play that and they get high return. But one day they got the news, FTX is gone, they lost their shirt. So that's a very high return, but also very high risk. So to me, for young people like all of you, if you learn financial literacy, it's not just about financial. It's about risk, reward. And risk reward is something that you have to face in your life. All right? You go to work for an investment bank, it's very successful. To be honest, that's a high-risk job. You see in the newspaper, all these big U.S. Wall Street firms fire managing directors. Low-risk job, relatively low-risk job, insurance like FWD. That's a relatively low-risk job, okay, compared to investment bank. So in life, you have to really balance. And so I think financial literacy is very important. Now coming back to your question, Malaysia and Hong Kong, both are community which we want to see young people moving up. Okay? No difference in the objective. In Hong Kong, yes, the upward mobility is tougher than when I first came to work. I first worked in 1973, well before all of you, or definitely well before all the ladies here are born. But, in 1973, we don't worry so much about upward mobility. Today, we worry about upward mobility because the whole economy has become more mature in Hong Kong. So as a result, our young people, yes, you're right, face a lot of pressure, deal with a lot more issues than my time. But there are, I believe, a lot of opportunities as long as you stay positive. Young people are our future leaders. If you are not positive, how can we be successful? All right? As a community, as a city, as a country, nowhere. So one has to be positive, one has to view our future with optimism and not pessimism. Okay? Life is not easy. No one tells you that life is easy. All right? When I grew up, I didn't have the conclusion that my life would be easy. All right? But I survived. Like all of you, life is not easy. The world has changed. The world is getting tougher than before. But I can assure you, there are still lots of opportunities, lots of ways to make yourself a successful person. As long as you do a couple things. You have to be a hard worker, all right? You know, you expect yourself to be a convenience store, 7-Eleven. Get up at 7 and, you know, work till 11. That's very important, 7-Eleven. Number 2, you have to be creative. Think. Don't be a copycat. Always be creative. Third, be a very, very, you know, what I call people's person. In this world, you have to communicate with people. Don't just focus on your iPhone, you know. Talk to people. I cannot stand some people having dinner together, say 4 of you, young man, each of you take out a phone and don't talk to each other. You talk to the phone. Even before you eat the food, you know, the camera eat the food first. 4 of you doing the same thing. So that is bad. You must have communication. And finally, I think it's important to have a global view of this world. You live in Malaysia, I live in Hong Kong. But I come to Malaysia very often to see you. You come to Hong Kong to visit me, okay? So you will know more about the world. We are all global citizens now. We no longer belong to one country. We belong to the world. So those are the 4 things I think, you know, should apply. Either you are in Hong Kong, you are in Malaysia, or for that matter, you are in Singapore, Jakarta, same thing, you know. So anyway, I stopped it. So, that's it.
Thank you. Some great wisdom there. But on one hand, you know, we're talking about working hard, about remaining positive, however hard and tough the world may be. I mean, you know, we're talking about financial literacy. We also cannot ignore issues of urban poverty, stagnant wages, structural economic issues, skills mismatch in the job market. That's what we're facing mainly among young people in Malaysia's economy. Tan Sri, to what extent do you think young people are facing the issue of financial literacy? You know, on an individual level, a young person doesn't know how to manage their finances. But, you know, we're talking about poverty, or we're talking about stagnant, low wages. To what extent then do you think this is also perhaps a problem of the economy, of stagnant issues, or structural economic issues?
Well, thank you, Naila. Well, before I answer that question, perhaps a quick background on myself and what are my thoughts on the subject matter. When Professor Ma started working in 1973, I was still in primary school. And when I was in primary school, I wanted to join the Boy Scouts movement. So I went home and asked my mother for 5 ringgit to buy the Boy Scouts uniform. And my mother told me that, sorry, we don't have the money. And we were poor, right? Now, as someone who came from a poor family, I then wanted, that result, I wanted to take the family out of poverty. And I think we were fortunate because we have a government, a country that believe in giving people good education to take their family out of poverty. So, alhamdulillah, I was given good education and went to MRSM and then later went to UK to become a chartered accountant. Now, why accountancy? Well, I asked people in my younger days which profession made the most money, and also that accountants make a lot of money. So that's actually the stress profession. And of course, later I found out that actuaries make a lot more money than accountants. But that's for another story. Well, now to me it's actually important for us to, among other things, talk about 3 elements. I think first of all, for young people, it is important for all of us to know that we must live within our means, right? Money is never enough, right, for most people. So, but how you make the most of the income that you have to live a more responsible and balanced life. And again, if you only have so much, don't live beyond your means so that you don't get into indebtedness that you cannot repay, and later you get into trouble. It's okay to borrow, but borrow for the right reason. So for example, if you want to build a home, yes, you want to shelter and borrow. If you need a car to get to work, for transportation, for you to borrow to earn income, I mean, fine. But make sure it's at a level that you can afford to service and to pay. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to investment, and like what Roma mentioned, make sure you understand the product, right? And I think comprehension of the investment instruments is very important. Knowing your risk appetite is actually very important. So, if you have limited sum, you are you have low risk appetite. Your basic investment instrument, fixed deposit, is actually good risk-free investment. For us Malaysians, investment in ESB would actually be something natural because it's a safe investment, protected, and give you reasonable returns. If you are working, you get your EPF commission. Leave your money in EPF because they provide good safe returns as well. So don't invest in things that you don't understand. Yes, you have a higher appetite, maybe a portion of your funds can be invested in stock market and so on, but make sure that it's truly based on investment, not based on speculation, not based on gambling. Right? And certainly, don't invest in cryptos. Sorry, from my view is actually, it is not an investment. It's pure speculation because there's no intrinsic value in cryptos. Right? So, and the third point is, as a basic principle, if something's too good to be true, chances are it's not true. Right? So if people give you high returns, promise you high returns, something's actually not right. Like, don't give them that money because there's nothing that will give you guaranteed returns, high returns. And these are mainly scams. Right? So someone tells you, okay, I'll give you 10% return, not per annum, but per month. Surely it's a Ponzi scheme, right? Or is this goes? Oh, someone says, oh, okay, you can invest your money in forex trading and so on, and give you 5% per annum, sorry, 5% per month return. Again, there's no such thing. So these are scams and so on. So, Naila, back to your question about the situation of the young people these days. So I think in Malaysia we've been fortunate because since the Asian financial crisis, we've been enjoying consistent growth in our GDP, averaging a good 5% on real terms. In nominal terms, if you add back the inflation of about 3%, so it's about 8% per annum. And I think in general, we have progressed, providing good business opportunity and employment opportunities. But I think if you start to look back in terms of the income that's accorded to the people in general, I think there's great room for improvement. Now, there was a time when our wages as a percentage of compensation was very low at 29%. This was back in 2010. And over the years, as part of our new economic model and inclusive growth policy, the government has targeted to increase that proportion of wages to GDP higher. So from 29% we went up to 32, 33, and the highest point for us was 37% in 2017. But unfortunately, since then, it's come down to about 35% level. I don't have the latest figures that somebody announced by the Department of Statistics as yet. But it is actually come down, and I think we need to revisit that. For more advanced economies like Singapore, US, and Hong Kong, the percentage is much higher. So I think for many of these countries, Singapore, for example, is actually well above 40%. In the US, the UK, and so on, it's more like 50%. Now, we don't want to get to that 50% level because that means that we will lose competitiveness. but at the 40% level, it's actually visible. So I think it is important for us to pursue that at the macroeconomic level, and at the company level, we must make sure that employers pay their people visibly well. And I think, unfortunately, when I look at the statistics, there's one released by EPF a month ago, where out of the 8.45 million active EPF contributors, 80% of them were earning below 5,000 ringgit, and half of them were earning below 3,000 ringgit per month in terms of salary. That's actually very, very low into this age and situation. Because we talk about the living wage, we're talking about 2,700 ringgit per month, just for you to have a decent living wage. And of course, if you're a couple, you need at least 5,000 ringgit and so on. So I think there's a lot more that can be done to actually improve the income level. I think we in Malaysia have been very successful to contain the cost. We remain on top when it comes to the Big Mac index. You can have a decent meal in Malaysian restaurants and so on at a fraction of the cost that you have to pay in Hong Kong or in Singapore. But I think what we can do is actually do more when it comes to increasing our privilege level. And I think once we have visible level of wage, then you can actually get people to manage their finances better. So to me, that's actually a very important point to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if I can just pause for a minute and kindly remind the audience that we do have about 10 minutes or so for our fireside chat, unfortunately, but after that we will have about 50 minutes of Q&A. So if you have any questions, we prepare them and then we can get right on to Q&A when we open the floor later on. But I do want to go back to you, Prof. So, we're talking about, going back to what Alina and Najib were talking about, access to inclusive financial literacy. Just, to put simply, really access on how young people know how to manage their finances better. You were saying how you grew up in the 70s, and now comparing to today, we have so many tools at our expense. How do you think young people should take advantage of the many avenues of learning about financial literacy, the access to knowledge that we have just on our phones, despite not liking how much time we spend on our phones, but it does unlock a whole world of knowledge for us. So what is the importance of really grabbing that opportunity to learn more about finances?
I think the young people have to take the initiative first, realizing that financial literacy is very important in their life, as we talked about, because after all, our young people are going to be our future leaders. How can our future leaders don't know about how to manage finance, right? So we have to recognize the importance of financial literacy first. Then there are many tools. That is why FWP sponsored this, very worthwhile project to educate the young people here, about financial literacy. And on top of it, I don't know about Malaysia, country would know better, but like in Hong Kong, we have a government-funded organization to educate young people. They do all sorts of studies, and they organize seminars, and they would go to school and teach the young people from very young, from their Chinese New Year pocket money, Lai Si, okay? Because the young kids get Lai Si from the seniors, and then and then they would teach them, what you should do with those red packets, and starting very young, and then all the way up to university students, because as I mentioned before, banks give out credit cards to university students, and if they are not careful, they could overspend and not, as Tan Sri said, spending within their means. And some students actually borrow money for investment. Unfortunately, they are in wrong investment and they get burned. So there are many, many ways to learn about it today, But if you remember certain principles, that would help a lot. For example, like Astro said, live within your means, all right? You know, remember the risk-reward ratio. Don't think that, you know, you can make high return with low risk. There's no such thing in life. No risk, high return, no such thing. So as long as you follow those principles, I think, you know, you already go a long way. You know, you really don't have to attend any sophisticated courses per se. That's my view. And to echo what Tan Shui was saying, I was very poor. When you are poor, actually, it's good. You know why? It teaches you how to manage your money. Because money doesn't come easy. And when you are poor, like I live in a 100 square feet unit with 5 members of my family. Every cent counts. So you know, actually I learned how to manage money because I was poor. I cannot imagine a rich boy, you know, how he spends his money. Like my daughter, by the way, managed a character education school in Hong Kong. And one of the first things she teaches the students is the value of money. Because some of her students are from quite well-to-do family. And they don't have concept. They would say, oh, you know, this is cheap. But it's not cheap. But they have no concept. So being poor is actually good training from a financial literacy point of view. So I learned a lot when I was running my household finance as the eldest son of the family. So I know every penny counts. And I would not spend money like water, because I don't have much water to spend anymore. But even if I have to be very careful. So many of the young people say, oh, I feel terrible. I'm poor compared to the boy next door. Don't feel that. You're actually very fortunate to be poor, because that teaches you a lot, including your drive. Both Tan Shui and I, as you heard, come from poor family. How do we get out of poverty? Education. Get a good education. I was very lucky to be able to go to Hong Kong University and get a degree. And that, in the 70s, was my passport to work. And I worked my way up. And luckily, I don't have to worry about 3 meals a day for me and my family. Now, education is very important for all of us. And for you, if you are poor, consider it a blessing. You are poor, that give you the drive for you to become successful. You know, I hope I'm looking at some of the most successful people, you know, in Malaysia one day. So, you know, in 20, 30 years' time, you become a tycoon here, a banker like Tan Shui, you know, or even Prime Minister, who knows?
Hello, if I may. Speaking of financial literacy, I think it's important to understand that it is a living skill. And my view is that it is responsibility of the government to make sure that every single Malaysian is given financial literacy skills. And alhamdulillah, we have that in school now. So we have financial literacy being embedded in one of the subjects in schools. So I think that's important. But having said that, you know, it is important for those subjects that the syllabus be modified and updated to be in line with the times. Now, notwithstanding that is already embedded in the school system, there will always be a crack. So, and I think this is where we have other programs to help supplement the national efforts in school. So we have the financial services industry between the central bank and the Securities Commission supported by all the financial institutions. We have numerous financial literacy programs being done. And of course, what we're doing at FWD is a Fund for Life program. This is one of those. And they come at various levels. So, for example, when it comes to say Bursa Malaysia, our program is much aligned towards giving people access to investment education. So we have, for example, Bursa Beginnings program, where we work with primary schools. We have the Bursa Sensibility programs. We also work with universities and so on. With the idea of making sure people understand with the amount of money that they have. So once you've addressed your basic needs for investments, the type of investments that you should be looking at, again based on your risk appetite and so on. So again, the point I wanted to make here is actually it's a basic financial literacy that's part of the mainstream, embedded from young at school level, but as we progress, is supported by various other programs. And I think we all have to do our part in this field.
Thank you for sharing. And unfortunately, we are coming towards the end of our fireside chat. So unfortunately, I don't have the time to ask you how many credit cards did you actually fork out to students, as Professor highlighted and stressed on several times. But we do want to give the chance to other university students, high school students who are joining us today. We have received some questions upon your registration. You did leave some questions, so I do have that. But we do want to hear from you. If you have any questions, please just raise your hands. Yes, I can start with you.
Yeah, Arina. My name is Arina. So, on financial literacy, what age should we teach our children, and what age should we teach our children, and what age appropriate curriculum that we should teach them, and then why start with Takaful instead of other financial related investments?
I think we should start off with the first question. So at what age should parents begin to teach their children about financial literacy?
May I take that? So I think it should be as young as possible. I think the moment they are educated to count, and I think this is actually where you should start to embed them with the knowledge of the value of money, or value of money. So I think, of course, in the formal education side, at the kindergarten level, I think getting into primary school. And it's not that difficult, because at the end of the day, everyone is taught mathematics, for example. You just have to actually broaden it a bit to talk about value for money or value of money. So maybe just quick digression. When my daughters were young, she was introduced to cookie making. And then she started to sell for cornflakes cookies, during festival, during fasting month. So she would sell 10 pieces for 2 ringgit. And so every year she would encourage my wife to actually make cookies and so on. So, and we asked her, why do you like it so much? Then I said, look, it's a good way of earning income, because I get 2 ringgit for the 10 that I sell. So that's 2 ringgit of profit for me. So she's got no sense of cost. Because the cost is all borne by the parents, right? But anyway, so I think we can start with basic first, financial literacy, and then from there you educate them about business. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Like I said about the red packet, red packet you give out to very young, children, and so it really started around the kindergarten time or even younger, and it's a lifetime learning. Throughout your life, you learn how to, handle your money, right? All the way up until now, I'm still learning how to handle money. So it's a lifetime learning experience, but start young.
Thank you. If I can share as well, I'm reminded of my experience baking cupcakes and selling them in school, and I actually made quite a lot of money until I started counting in cash the money that I made in the back of class, and then my teacher saw, and then she just shut it down. It's like, this is school, you're here to learn and not make money. So, you know, I was just a natural born capitalist, I guess, as a kid, and then I got shut down by the man. So that's me. So if we can move on to the next question, yes.
Okay, hello. So my name is Roberto, and I'm an economics student. So when we talk about financial literacy, I truly believe that one can be financially literate when they establish what is money, what and how they see money. So for me, money means time. So what is the best way to change the mindset of especially youngsters on how they see money, so that they can understand the true value of money?
Well, I guess here we can reflect on both your experiences growing up in poverty. In money, a cent means different to each person based on how they grew up. But perhaps for you, how do you feel a young person should value money?
Well, I guess the best way is actually to understand what can you get out of a ringgit. Right? So you can be spendthrift and that money will not go far. But if you're very careful with your money, then you can actually get quite a lot. So for me, as an accountant, I always believe in value for money. I used to, I like travel, and I would always shop for the best travel deals. So I used to go to KK for 69 ringgit return on AirAsia seat. And on board the seat, I would meet someone, and I asked him, so how much do you pay for a seat? And he said, I paid 300 ringgit, and proud of it. Then after I told him that I only spent 69 ringgit, that he was guessing
Impressive.
Yeah, but I think the point here is actually stretching your ringgit is really important, and getting the most of your ringgit is very important. So not just how much money can you get, yes, so you strive, get the best return for your time, but once you got to the money, make sure that you stretch your ringgit to get the best, the most value out of it.
Thank you. Professor, would like to share, how do you value your money?
First of all, I want to say this to you, that why do we want to make money? Have you given some thought? Why? Why do you want to make money? In my book, we want to make money for various reasons. Number one, sense of security. When I was young, growing up, I was so poor. I don't feel secure every day, to be honest. I don't know whether I have a next meal. I was so poor that I really worry about my own living. It was so bad. I can tell you, throughout a week, all I eat is rice with some fat from the pork that mixed with soy sauce. That's how I survive. We survive as a family. So I feel that when you are thinking money, the money gives you what? Security, right? But make sure you make money in a legitimate way. There are lots of temptation in this world. In Hong Kong recently, we had reported cases of some bad people, the triads, recruiting young people to do illegal things, to give you money. So never do that. You ruin your life. Alright? So money is important, but make it in the most legitimate way. Work 7-11 to get it. Alright? First thing. Second thing, money gives you security. Your money. Certain people make more and more money. Why? Because they take satisfaction from making more money. They are successful. So they give you satisfaction, right? But at certain point, you are successful and you are already living very well. What should you do with your money? Give it away. Give it to charity. Okay? Because you cannot bring it to your graveyard. Well, you're too young to do it. I am beginning that stage. You're too young. But, you know, money is only a number. Alright? We have a saying in Hong Kong is you are in heaven and your money is in the bank. You know? So what's the use, right? So you must use your money wisely. Give away. When you give away, you help other people. And other people will benefit. That makes your life more enriching. You know? So money is only a number, but that gives you security. It's important to make money. Money gives you security. Like I feel more secure than before. When I was young, like around your age, I worry about my life every day, honestly. Alright? So, but money is only a number. And it gives you satisfaction, it gives you a lot of things. But at the end of the day, make sure when you become a tycoon in Malaysia, give away, okay?
Thank you. And you have a question as well, please.
Yeah, so good afternoon, thank you for having me over here. So my questions, there are two parts. So I remember I read before that there are more millionaire per capita in Hong Kong as compared to Malaysia. So if it is so, may I ask what?
What? In the more in Hong Kong?
Millionaire.
There are more millionaires in Hong
Oh.
Kong than Malaysia. Is it something that Hong Kong does differently in terms of teaching? That's one part, the children. Then second question is what we can do as young people to get one step closer to become millionaire.
This is a very difficult question.
This guy can hear with vision.
He already has some vision in mind. Anyway, first of all, you must appreciate that Hong Kong, the growth pattern is different from Malaysia. So it's difficult to compare the two economies. We have a lot of millionaires, but we also have a lot of poor people. Okay. So, but our economic structure is very capitalistic, and we have been lucky with the geopolitical situation. When we were a colony, we benefit from a lot of trading opportunity between the US and China. And now we are part of China. We benefit from China's uprising since 40-odd years ago as a kind of social capitalistic economy. So we've been very, very lucky. And that sort of economic environment coupled with our growth as an international financial center managed to produce a lot of rich people. Okay? The richest guy in Hong Kong are the property tycoons because the property market has done very well. Hong Kong has very limited supply of land, so relatively speaking, you know, the land prices are very high, the property price is very high. So if you happen to be in property business 40 years ago or 50 years ago, you make a lot of money. Okay? And of course, we also have imported millionaires, people who make a lot of money from the mainland, from all over the world who come to Hong Kong to live. So we have a high number of millionaires. It is indeed a very well managed community and a lot of opportunities for young people. So difficult to compare the two places. I see a lot of opportunity in Malaysia as well. If I grew up here, I'm sure I would also do quite well, you know. As long as you follow my rules of 7-Eleven, okay? I really think that opportunity exists everywhere. It's not just Hong Kong or Malaysia. As long as you work hard, you follow the certain principles, you'll be doing fine. That's my view.
Thank you. Now we do just have a couple of minutes left, but I do also want to hear your thoughts on this, Tan Sri, about a young man here wanting to become a millionaire. is that the kind of mission and vision that a young person should have in their life?
Well, thank you, Nada. I think basically as a human being, we all want to be successful in life, and being successful, part of it may involve money. Right? So money is
Measure
not,
by money.
yeah. Money is not everything,
Money not
but it goes a long way when you have money, right? So different countries will have different level of income and so on. A million ringgit in Malaysia will have different name to a million in Singapore or in Hong Kong and so on. Right? Certainly in Malaysia, although may not have that many it's millionaires, but the million that you have will go a long way and high quality of life and so on. Now, when you have more money, I would like to encourage you to do more for society. Interestingly enough, Arif at the onset mentioned about this event being held here instead of St. Regis. Now, at St. Regis Kuala Lumpur, there's a very, very nice Japanese restaurant. And you can have a dinner omakase. It means that the menu that the chef will choose for you and pay 1,500 ringgit, 1,500 ringgit for just one meal for one person, not for 10. Right? So, and that's minimum wage for you. So the next time you have the urge to spend that kind of money on a single meal, maybe what you should do is that you refrain yourself from having that meal and share that 1,500 ringgit with someone else. Or you can actually also have it, but make sure that you allocate another 1,500 ringgit for other charity purposes and so on. The point here is actually, yes, we want to be successful in life, we work hard, we work smart to earn the income that we deserve, but beyond that, make sure you share with your family, you share it with the people who need them more than you do.
Thank you, and I believe we've come to the end of our session today, and I think it's appropriate to end on that note, that money really isn't everything, but it does go a long way, and hopefully in the next few years when you become a millionaire, we'll all get to have a taste of that as well once you share that with everyone around you. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom to both of our panelists today. I hope you will
Thank you so much. I'll just like to invite Alina to present some tokens of appreciation and some closing remarks.
2019.
I just want to say thank you again to our esteemed speakers and Naila for moderating. As you know, this space is actually our classroom. This is where classes happen. Our students come here on a weekday, and today's lesson has been very, very valuable. So thank you again for your insights. I do have some souvenirs that I would like to give Tantri and Prof. As we are a social enterprise, and at the same time we support other social enterprises, and this is something that we got from Batik Butik for the speakers. Najib, would you like to